Hello everyone, and welcome to the Student Sparks podcast, where naturopathy meets neuroscience. I'm Parker Malev, the naturopath.
And I'm Emma Johnson, the neuroscientist. Join us on this adventure as we delve into the depths of nutrition, nature, medicine, and the mind,
where every insight sparks discussion and debate.
Welcome back, everyone. Today is me, Emma, my very first individual episode. Parker and I decided that as we get back into classes, we're going to start doing individual shorter episodes, unless we have time to do a longer one together, just because we want to focus on our academics and make sure that we are prioritizing that first. So we're going to split some up, give each other more time to edit, record, research, stuff like that. So this is my very first individual episode. Because it's my first time to talk a little bit more about my specific passions, I thought I would jump right in with this episode and tackle something I have a decent amount of experience in, which is getting into undergraduate research. In previous episodes, I mentioned that I am a part of a research lab on campus, but I didn't mention that I'm actually on the board of my school's biology research club for undergraduates. I'm on the advisory board right now, but next year I will actually be on the executive board. So I'm going to be, I think, the liaison. So basically, I've worked hard to learn how to engage in research myself and have also used what I've learned to help others dip their toe into this amazing world of undergraduate research. I'm very passionate about it. When I first decided I wanted to get more into research, I was totally on my own and I had no idea what being in a research lab would look like or even how to start looking for one to join. There was just not a lot for me to sort of look into. They didn't have as many options that I knew about on campus. So that's why the goal of this episode is to give you as much knowledge as I can about research so that no one else has to feel as alone as I was when beginning my research journey. For this episode, I'm going to split it into 3 sections. The first section, I'm going to talk about what to expect as an undergraduate research. The second one, I'm going to talk about research-backed benefits of undergraduate research. And then 5 practical tips for someone wanting to get into research will be the last segment. We will also touch a little bit on the difference between on-campus research and internships as well, because I know not everyone goes to a research university like I do, so internships can be a really great way of getting into research without having to rely on something on your campus. So let's just start off by talking about what undergraduate research is and what an undergraduate student in a lab might do on a day-to-day basis. I'm currently in a lab on my campus, so I'm going to pull from that experience a lot. I'm going to start off with discussing what research on campus might look like, and then we'll move into internships. If you've engaged with any professors at your school, you may have noticed that some of them have labs on campus, especially if you go to a research school like I. A lot of professors actually decide to work at a specific school more to pursue their research interests than actually teaching, which can be frustrating, but also really good if you're looking for research experience. I talked about that in the first episode, like the frustration of professors that aren't really there to teach and more there for research. So check that out if you're interested. Research professors tend to have a large lab that they are a part of, and then multiple doctoral and or master's students that are working on their own specific projects that fall under the professor's research interests. I'm just going to give a quick example. So if a professor is specifically interested in Lysocatina felica, which is African land snails, as an invasive species and how it impacts their environment, then they may focus on that in their lab, but they could also have doctoral students that are studying something more specific, like how the diet of L. felica has changed based on the different areas it has inhabited, and how that has damaged those specific ecosystems. So some students will end up going to a professor that they really like and asking to be in their lab because they just see interesting things about their research, but then they end up being a part of something that they didn't even know that the professor was interested in because they ended up being under a graduate student studying something different. So it's important to know whose project you will be working under when starting a lab, whether it's the actual research of the professor or someone under that professor researching something slightly different. Once you're a part of a lab and have a specific project you're working on, the types of things you end up doing can vary dramatically depending on what you're studying and the amount of independence the investigator gives you. For example, I know of some friends who end up just conducting surveys in psychology labs they're a part of, or just doing basic stuff like that, while I get to actually collect water samples and run DNA analyses, and even others get to have their own small project underneath the principal investigator, which is really cool. At the end of the day, on-campus research often starts out mainly as just doing what your graduate students ask you to do, whether that's transcribing their field notes, something I actually did for months before being able to do DNA analyses and sample collection, or taking notes during their experiments. Often, the longer you participate in a lab, the more freedom you will get, especially if you build a rapport with your mentor. So make sure that you're engaging with them, taking on extra responsibility so that you can eventually end up taking on more. So that's basically the types of things you might encounter in an on-campus lab. Obviously, depending on what you're researching and who you're researching under, on-campus labs are really convenient and you often get credits for them. So it's a great opportunity for during the school year, even if you're taking classes, because they don't always take up a bunch of time. You get credits for it. Okay, so now that we've covered the basics of on-campus research, I want to move into chatting about internships, specifically research experiences for undergraduates, REUs. For those who don't know, an REU is something created by the National Science Foundation that helps undergraduates access off-campus research internships. A research area has to go through a few processes that I'm not as familiar with in order to become an REU site. The most important thing to know, though, is that if you see REU somewhere on a college or lab website, it means they have opportunities for undergraduate students and are actively seeking them out. Even better, if you go on the National Science Foundation website, you can see a whole list of all the REUs and sort by your particular research interests. This is a great resource, so I'll make sure to tag it at the bottom of the podcast description, and I highly recommend checking it out. It's actually how I found many of the areas that I applied for this summer, and it saved me a lot of time trying to sift through a bunch of different research opportunities. Okay, so as for what REUs are actually like, they tend to be a lot more structured, but with more ability for independence. REUs focus more on students getting a chance to have their own interests, and some will even allow students to create their own research questions that they can tackle throughout the research experience. So if you've already had undergraduate research, REUs is a great, some sort of REU is a great next step. REUs are created for the specific purpose of granting undergraduates an opportunity to expand their research experience in a more independent setting, versus on-campus research, which is more about aiding another researcher in the research they're already pursuing. So most REUs will assign interns a mentor who aligns with their interests, and then the research assistant can research a project that the mentor gives them or present their own project that still aligns with the mentor's own research. REUs are a fantastic way to go from just doing what your mentor asks you to in order to further their personal research to being able to further your own personal research. Although internships don't create the same long-term commitment that you might get from an on-campus lab, it does grant you the ability to sort of expand your horizons and make connections with scientists you may not have been able to interact with otherwise. Interns are usually working with lots of different people their age, and also any graduate students and professors working at the REU lab as well. So lots of opportunities to meet new people that also do research. REUs tend to come from cool associations too, like the Smithsonian Institution or large labs at the National Institute of Health or National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which can help with expanding networks even more and allows you to gain exposure to what it's like to work in a larger lab that's not necessarily a campus lab. It's difficult to speak on the day-to-day aspect of RUs because of how much they vary. So I would suggest looking into some labs you're interested in or labs that go along with your specific research interests and reaching out to students who have worked there to see what they have to say about it to actually get like a day-to-day. So that's the basic breakdown of internships. Although I can't get into the specific day-to-day, it's really easy to find that if you find a research lab that is researching something you're interested in. Okay, let's move into the second section, the research-backed benefits of undergraduate research. Now that we understand what undergraduate research is and what it entails, I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of undergraduate research from both the research point of view and the student's point of view. I'm going to pull from some studies about undergraduate research that will be linked below, so feel free to check those out if you want to learn more. Basically, the benefits of undergraduate research on students is insane. In one study, 4,500 undergraduate students were asked about their research and the benefits of it, and 88% said that their confidence in conducting a research project drastically increased. 83% said that their confidence in their research skills increased, and 73% said that their awareness of what graduate school is like increased as well. In fact, 29% reported having an increase in interest in pursuing a PhD. Now, I personally think that an understanding of graduate school is a huge benefit on its own because of how important I believe exposing undergrads to graduate school is, but that's a whole other episode. Even if you don't think that graduate school is as important, the other two benefits are also amazing. Being confident in understanding how to conduct and perform research is a fantastic skill to have. From a less technical standpoint, there are also studies that suggest that undergraduate research helps students develop critical thinking skills, better communication, and even prepare them for professional service. These are all benefits that extend out past students who actually want to pursue research in the future. Even if you're not particularly interested in going to graduate school, the skills that you develop from undergraduate research extend into other jobs as well. Now, within the scientific community as a whole, an increase in undergraduate researchers means an increase in scientific education and understanding. By having undergraduate students in labs, they become exposed to a lot of interesting scientific ideas, they learn how to understand research processes, and they learn how research actually takes place. This creates curious and critical young adults who go into the world understanding research at a deeper level. This is super important. Even if the student doesn't go on to pursue research, by having hands-on research, students learn better. This is why things like classes that are linked to undergraduate labs are so beneficial. Being able to touch and manipulate what you're working on can greatly increase the ability to retain that information. By providing more research labs for students, they get a more efficient and well-rounded education. Overall, there are many different benefits for both students and the scientific community, even ones that I haven't touched on. This is why it's so important to teach students how to get into undergraduate research and engage with professors and other lab technicians and principal investigators. So given the benefits of undergraduate research and the benefits of giving students the tips they need to get into undergraduate research, I want to give some more practical advice through the use of my 5 tips on how to get involved yourself. My first tip for success in research is don't be afraid to reach out. A lot of college students are shy, and understandably so, but if you want to start building a network and getting involved, you have to be able to put yourself out there. For on-campus research, try going to a professor's office hours and chatting with them about their research. Often, I would become really interested with one of my professors because I found them to be so cool and their class was really interesting to me. So I would look up their research, read the abstract of the papers they published, and then I would go to their office hours and ask them about that research. You can ask leading questions like, what do you think was the most important outcome of your research? Or what was the most difficult part of your research? Most professors enjoy being asked about their research, so they will sometimes go on and on about what they discovered, what they wish they could keep pursuing, what they think the most beneficial outcome was, etc. This gives you such a great in because the professor now knows that you show a specific interest in their studies, and also just puts a face to a name, which is important. Even if their research doesn't particularly interest you, becoming friends with professors can help you get into other labs that align more with what you want to learn. For example, if you get really close with the professor and share some of your experiences with them, they could act as a great reference when applying to other labs, or they could even help you connect with researchers who are more aligned with your interests. Although this point seems to particularly align with on-campus research, it's also important for looking into internships as well. Overall, professors have lots of connections and insights that can help with all sorts of research lab opportunities. So my second tip for success is to not be afraid of cold emailing. Cold emailing is usually most effective for on-campus labs because there's usually one person who runs the lab that you can reach out to. Cold emailing can be really uncomfortable, and it can be difficult to know exactly how to draft one, especially if you don't already have a connection with the professor you're hoping to work under. So I want to go over a little bit on how to reach out to new professors together. I would highly suggest creating an email draft in Gmail that you can use as a template for each lab you're looking into. Start with basics like who you are, what year you're in, and what you're majoring in. Although this may seem kind of redundant, it can help the professor know a little bit more about you and ease into the email so you don't jump right into asking them for a favor. The next most important part of the email is showcasing why you are interested in their specific research. Get excited, get passionate, talk about what you love about their lab, what piqued your interest. I'm gonna give a quick example from my own research. So I was really interested in this lab that used nudibranch species to understand neuroscience. This was so fascinating to me because it brought together evolution, neuroscience, and marine science in a way that I did not know was possible at that time. For that reason, I decided I wanted to email this professor and ask to talk to them about the lab. I ended up going on a rant about how interested I was in understanding the evolution of the brain through marine mammals, and he found it really endearing. So he ended up just chatting with me about my life and what I wanted to study. It was honestly an awesome resource that I had happened upon, and I'm so grateful that I took the time to chat with him. Okay, back to what to put in the email. After you talk about how you're interested in their lab, I would suggest asking them if they have any time to just chat about their lab, like I mentioned in my example. Instead of just asking if you can be a part of their lab, open it up to general discussion about their lab and even ask if they have openings during the time you meet with them to chat. This relieves a lot of pressure for both them and you because it makes it more comfortable. You're not asking them for a favor outright. You're not pushing them to be a part of your lab. You're just interested and you want to hear more. So the main takeaway here is that you should make sure to ease into what you're talking about, while also making sure that you're fully describing the passion that you have for their research. Okay, let's move on to tip 3. My third tip is to make sure that you're expanding your horizons. A lot of the time, people will get caught up in exactly what they want to do. They desire to find a lab that is exactly their interest, denying other labs that may be similar but not quite close enough. This can really stunt the process of finding a lab because it's rarely possible to find something that is exactly what you're looking for. For this reason, it's best to be open to lots of different opportunities that may not be exactly the same as what you're looking for, but can still give you a lot of good experience. I'm particularly interested in marine ecology and neuroscience, but I wasn't able to find anything like that on my campus, so I decided to just apply to any sort of ecology and evolution lab, regardless of what types of animals they were looking into. This led me to the primate lab that I am a part of now, and although it's not something I would want to study in the future, it's given me a lot of amazing experience in how to conduct research. I also haven't found a lot of research internships that are exactly what I'm looking for, especially with the difficulty of finding housing as well. I've been looking into ecological research with insects and lizards, but not always sharks, the thing I'm actually really interested in. But I'm still applying and looking into every single research opportunity that could give me experiences that will allow me to become a better researcher.
It's also just a great thing to put on a resume as an undergraduate. Basically anything that would give the experiences you need in the future, like collecting field samples, gel electrophoresis, or DNA extraction is a fantastic thing to put on a resume, a cover letter, anything like that. But the most important thing to keep in mind is just using these research opportunities as a jumping off point, not as the be-all end-all of what you're going to end up studying and researching. You will always have more chances in the future to become more specific in your research. As an undergraduate, it's just more important to get the experiences you need right now and worry about specificity later. Okay, let's move on to the fourth tip, which is utilizing on-campus resources. On most campuses, there are a lot of research seminars and events that are free for students to attend. Many researchers from all over will come to give speeches on their work. And so by going to any of these that catch your fancy, you can learn more about research as a whole and then also connect with those speakers. A lot of the time, they'll have a little while where people can ask questions, and if you're lucky, they even stay after their speech to talk with people. Being able to bring up the courage to talk to them is such an amazing way to broaden your network. A lot of the people who speak at these events either have connections at internships or labs, or they're actually a part of an internship or lab. Just make sure to ask them specific questions about their research and open up about what you're studying and are passionate about, and oftentimes they'll love how excited you are. Another good on-campus resource to utilize is any type of research club. I'm a part of the advisory board at my undergraduate research club at my school, and we work really hard to connect students with undergraduate research, whether it's on or off campus. We help them email teachers, create cover letters, resumes, etc. If you're able to, try your best to connect with someone on one of these boards, and you would end up with one of the best resources possible. Like, this is exactly what we are working to do, just help people like you. All right, let's move on to our fifth tip. The fifth tip is to find a balance between your research and academics. I specifically find this to be the most difficult because I really struggle with separating the two, but I feel like treating on-campus research like another class and off-campus research / internships as a part-time or full-time job is the best way to reconcile it within yourself. If you treat on-campus research like a class, then it sort of just fits in with what you're already doing. Most of the time, you don't have to do anything outside of the lab, so it's just like a class without homework. When you do this, it doesn't feel as overwhelming, and often it's really similar anyway because you can get credits for your lab, and yeah, it's literally like another class. Off-campus RUs are different, but they're still really nice because you often get paid for working there, and because of this, you can just treat it like another job, depending on how often you're working there, full-time or part-time. Over the summer, when people usually do RUs, many friends and siblings are also working, so it just feels like the same thing. Just try not to take classes over breaks if you're doing research as well, the same way you wouldn't take classes if you were doing a full-time job. I've often struggled with this myself because I really enjoy taking classes outside of the normal school year, but you really just want to put priority outside of the school year on the research that you're doing, because priority for classes is for the academic school year. Priority for research, that's outside of the school year, because that's the only time that you're going to get an opportunity to do something like that. All right, we're going to do one last bonus tip, and then we're going to wrap up. So the last bonus tip is learn from your setbacks. If you're getting rejected from a lot of RUs or labs, try asking them, why did you get rejected? Or go over everything and find out for yourself. Update your resume to fit what you're applying for better. Have people peer at everything you send out, and constantly ask for feedback from everyone you're applying to, whether you're accepted to the position or not. Ask professors that you're close to what you did right and wrong when you first started connecting with them, so you can learn more when you connect with more professors in the future. Ask friends to join you while you go to research seminars and have them listen to you chat with the speaker afterward, and then they can just tell you how it went from an objective point of view. Basically, welcome critiques and you'll just continue to get better, because that's the real goal. You're not going to be getting jobs left and right as a freshman. It's a learning process, and you need to treat it like that. It'll take a little while, but eventually you'll sort of get into a groove, get into a routine. You'll find what works and everything. So yeah, that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for bearing with me through my first personal episode. I hope you gained at least one thing from this podcast. If any of you guys has any questions or concerns about research, feel free to leave a comment down below. You could message us on Instagram, or you could even email us. We have an email. It's studentsparks03@gmail.com, and either I or Parker will reach out, because we're here to help you succeed. That's our goal here, is to find a way to help you guys get research opportunities. So I hope you guys had fun listening to this podcast. Thank you again, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We had so much fun creating this episode, and we hope you enjoy it as much as we do.
If you'd like to learn more, follow us on Instagram at studentsparks.ep, where we'll post all kinds of information and episode updates.
Don't forget to check in every other week to learn more about what it is like to be a student of neuroscience
And naturopathy.